Right. Thank you so much for joining us today on the broadcast, Danielle. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm
Abs-
excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of let parents know, and I'll put links and everything in our show notes, but if they would like to follow you on Instagram, you are Mr_Myo302. And that's actually where I ran into you, was on Instagram, saw what you were doing and totally fell in love with you. So thank you so much for being on the show. I love what you do on social.
Thank you so much for reaching out. Yeah, I was excited to hear from you. I was excited to, get some word out.
Yeah. And, that's part of what I really liked is you take a very different approach to getting the word out and talking about myofunctional therapy and breathing on social media. So you tie it in with your daily life and humor, which I think is really great. And that's part of what caught my eye. So one of the things that you talk about is exercise-based myofunctional therapy. So let's just start with, what that is and just, for our jumping off point.
Sure. Well, so exercise-based myofunctional therapy, a lot of people, when they first hear about myofunctional therapy, when we have to explain them, we kind of explain it's physical therapy for like the muscles of the jaw, the tongue, the lips. I've been practicing speech-language therapy for a very long time. And what I found with most of my clients actually was that they needed to practice, they needed to do the exercises 2 to 3 times a day. And when I'm working with children and when I saw working with adults, is those persons who worked on those exercises, and I could tell based on palpation and based on changes in function, I could tell that they were doing these exercises, and these were the people who I saw were having the most progress. So I very much stress the exercise component. It's not just doing exercise, but also stretches, massages. But so that's kind of how I like to delineate myself a little bit. Not so much as a myofunctional therapist, but as a speech therapist. I think that myofunctional therapy is like just a great foundation for good speech therapy. Having good range of motion, good strength, and loosening up tight tissues that are restricting. And so that's kind of where the exercise-based myofunctional therapy comes from.
Oh, all right. And why did you choose on social media to take such a different perspective as far as, getting your message out there?
Well, when it comes to with humor, I guess, people they don't want to be lectured at. We know that moms and dads, patients during sessions don't want to be lectured at. They want things to be fun. They want to learn and they want to laugh. What I'm learning, I'm 35, not the youngest person, not the oldest, but what I'm learning is that the attention span is sometimes pretty limited. So you got to put something out there funny, and that's how you'll kind of get people's attention. And so I'm also getting, I would say, a little bit more comfortable with myself in front of a camera, which is, and the way that I do that,
hard to get used to.
Some nervous laughter probably to start, and then a little bit more, let's like really make this fun, like talk with a silly voice, post everyday problems that you have in the home, and how you can do breathing exercises while you're doing your household chores, or while you're making your coffee, or things like that.
Working in your basement with your nose strip, for example.
Exactly. Working in the basement, chipping away at paint.
Yeah, I love that. So clearly, nasal breathing and health, that's your passion. Where did this passion, where did it come from?
Oh, wow. to keep it short, or man, can't even, like about 3 years
No,
ago.
just go for it.
So I've been a lifelong like kind of exerciser, runner, if you will. So running was always a hobby, all the way back to like high school, cross country, track and field. I was one of those guys. And about 3 years ago, I was really having a hard time. I was getting short of breath. I was getting headaches, legs cramping up, and wasn't able to run as far as I used to be able to. And I was just like, what is going on? And I came across this book by James Nestor, or not James Nestor, Patrick McCown, called the Oxygen Advantage. And I found out that I was hyperventilating. So as soon as I was running out the door, I found that I was breathing through my mouth and I was breathing fast already. And as I read the book, I was like, oh, for what? I just started running. I don't need to breathe like that. And then, of course, I found that, nasal breathing is most optimal for physical activity. And that was just a huge paradigm shift for me, because I thought to myself, how come nobody told me how important it is to breathe through my nose? Like in all my life, in 30, well, I guess at the time, 32, 33 years, no one ever once told me, doctor, nurse, teacher, or coach, basketball coach, cross country coach, nobody told me about like the importance of nasal breathing. So I was amazed, and I'm still amazed. And I knew that I needed to be that person at that point. I needed to kind of change my focus and be that person who it stresses the importance of nasal breathing.
Right. And, you make a very interesting and valid statement. It's something that I have heard a lot on the podcast, but, up until recently, you don't hear about nasal breathing. It just, we didn't talk about it. So where is this coming from all of a sudden? All of a sudden, it's just like this light has gone off everywhere and everyone is talking about it. And it's, we're all pushing, in the same direction to try to get this message out.
I mean, content is just so available now. And I think that has something to do with it. Podcasts, these books. I mean, when I initially started, I started with the Oxygen Advantage, and then I read Breath by James Nestor, and then just book after book on breathing. I think COVID was a really, really big wake-up call to a lot of people. I know that changed me as I was in the inpatient rehab setting at the time, and I had a lot of clients who just couldn't really participate in therapy because of like stress, anxiety, and like pain. And so I couldn't really work with them on their speech or their swallowing because of all these other issues going on. And I found that incorporating breathing exercises was something that was helping my patients to actually work on their goals. But I think, there's a lot of factors that have kind of, parents are asking questions. They're asking questions. They're not, doctors, speech pathologists, myofunctional therapists, we know what we know. Other people know things that we don't. And people are asking more questions and they're seeking answers from multiple sources and they're doing their own research. And it's amazing. It's great. I love it when people question.
Yeah. And ask, what's going on. And are you also starting to see a lot more referrals coming in from pediatricians and dentists?
That's one of the I think the biggest things as a myofunctional therapist is the education aspect. We're not just educating parents, we're educating kids. We're going to dental practices. We're educating the dentists. we're educating speech-language pathologists, because in my experience, you know, in schooling, I didn't really look under the tongue too much.
Really?
Yeah, I think that it's a missing part kind of from a lot of speech language pathology curriculums. And I find that that's becoming, like, education is becoming one of the things that's helping to garner those referrals. Pediatricians are looking for help. People are looking for help.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And you work in your practice, you work with children and adults, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. So
And
we're
so, yeah,
sorry.
so tell us a little bit more about, you know, your practice. Where are y'all located, and just a little bit more.
Sure. So we're located in Newark, Delaware. We're called the Center for Airway and Facial Development. And our sister practice is called the Pain and Sleep Therapy Center. We have a practice in Newark, Delaware, and we also have one near the main line in Philadelphia. So the Pain and Sleep Therapy Center is more so adult-centered, clients with TMJ, sleep apnea, and issues of the like. And then, so our new center, the Center for Airway and Facial Development, is a pediatric focused center working on intervention through early intervention and through prevention. And, you know, we saw, or Dr. Robinson, our triple board certified like TMJ and sleep dentist, and he's the individual who does the functional frenuloplasty procedures. He noticed that a lot of his adult patients, I mean, they developed into these issues. And, you know, when you research like more about pediatric growth and development, we see that all of these adult issues could have potentially been prevented.
Right.
And so then that's what kind of spearheaded him to open the Center for Airway and Facial Development with our other pediatric dentist, Dr. Joanna Green. And so that's, I mean, we offer early intervention consults for babies, toddlers, up to like school age. We do, or Dr. Green does, fixed expanders. She uses the ALF Appliance. We do myofunctional therapy consultations. Obviously, you know, pediatric frenectomies and functional frenuloplasties. But it's all centered under one place. I work in collaboration with another myofunctional therapist, Lauren Reinhold. She has a background in registered dental hygiene, and my background's in speech language pathologies, medical based primarily. So we have like a good together. We have a really good base of knowledge. Again, we have Dr. Green, who she does structural development, and she's very familiar, obviously, with pediatric growth and development. And then in the future, we're looking to, I mean, occupational therapy, feeding therapy, you know, maybe in-house body work, such as craniosacral therapy.
Yeah.
The stars are the limit. Yeah,
they are. I love that you're doing all of this together. Right.
Exactly.
We're seeing a lot more of this kind of cross-functional team work in practices.
I mean, our core values are compassion, innovation, collaboration, which is so important. I mean, myofunctional disorders, they rarely exist in isolation. There's other things going on in the body, potentially like allergies. And so we need to educate, and we need to collaborate with other providers and speak with them and ask for their help.
Yeah. Yep. And I am hearing a lot of that. This kind of whole body approach is really moving more to the forefront. And for our listeners, I'll put a link because a couple of podcasts with Dr. Hall and then Dr. Tasha to talk about the ALF Appliance and cranial sacral, just to make it easier for parents. I want to, get a little bit more specific now, if we could, on something.
Sure.
All right. So when you're resting your tongue in your roof of your mouth, we talk about this a lot. And I've said in other podcasts, I always try to do this, which I'm sure parents are doing when they're listening to it. We all try to do it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What does it look like? So when you're trying it at home, how do you know if you're doing this correctly or if you have a tie?
Ooh, yeah. So that would be, well, what I would recommend is you schedule a consult with a myofunctional therapist.
Right.
We would gather some objective information, photographs, and just review that with the client. Potentially, in our office, we do the CBCT scan in order to get like a really good picture of the whole airway and how the craniofacial development has been progressing. But yeah, in order to rest your tongue to the roof of the mouth, I would say it's difficult for us to really put. We want the tip of the tongue on the spot or right behind the two front teeth on that little piece of skin where we would typically maybe burn on a piece of pizza. And then we want the middle and the back of the tongue fully up. And this is me all the time in sessions, putting my hands up. This is your tongue.
Right. Okay.
And if you're able to suction your tongue gently to the roof of your mouth comfortably, that's kind of an indication maybe you don't have a tongue tie. But if you're doing so and it's effortful and there's other muscles that you have to engage, like in your neck or in your eyes as you're lifting your tongue up, then that's kind of an indication of either like a tongue tie or a tongue restriction. But it could also be low tongue tone. Many of my clients, it's really difficult to determine whether there's a tie until we do exercises or
and you mentioned tongue tone. So, and I've read that in some other stuff. What is that exactly? I mean, are you literally talking about just like in your arm, muscle tone? It's the same thing.
Yes, it's a similar thing. The tongue is a muscle. It's a really important muscle, and the tongue ideally should rest against the roof of the mouth. And if it's not strong enough, that's one thing that can potentially limit it from reaching the roof of the mouth. So, I mean, signs of low tone can be like lots of when you stick the tongue out, lots of quivering of the tongue. Really just difficulty elevating the tip of the tongue, maybe the back of the tongue. But tone or function is one of the first things that we're looking at in our evaluations. And that's an important thing too. I mean, if you see a frenum, that's one thing. I mean, of course, this frenum may be holding the tongue down, but also the tongue might have become weak because that frenum's been holding the tongue down this whole time and it hasn't been able to elevate. And other muscles have been, again, compensating and trying to help out, trying to help the tongue reach up there.
Got it. Okay, well, that makes sense. So, and they can't see us, but I just kind of want to divert a little bit because we were talking before we went live. Yeah, before we went live. Behind you, there are some books. And we've got several of them on our website, but I just wanted to talk about a little bit because obviously you've read these and these are things you probably recommend to parents. So I wanted to speak to these a little bit, especially the ones that are for kids, because we don't see a lot of those.
So we have breathing is my superpower. That's one of the good ones for, I think that this is a good school age type of book. Teaches a lot about, it's an empowering book, and it kind of teaches children about how, we can change our breathing, we can control our breathing. And when we control our breathing, it can have an effect on our emotions and our behaviors. And it's a good kid-friendly way to kind of explain something that is complex. Breathing, and often, like, we're not educated too much at a young age about the importance of breathing and proper breathing. I like that book, and then there's a couple of other ones behind it that are for, let's say, toddler age. The one, Lick and Sniff by Matthew Van Vliet. Those are really good from a sensory motor approach, I think, for children. We definitely recommend those in, like, early intervention, are like 1 to maybe 3 or 4 ages, getting kids just exploring what they can do with their tongue, licking, and like the importance of their nose with the sniff book. Those are definitely recommended. Really good reads, and really good. Kids love them. They want to read them every time they come into my office. They always see the breathing is my superpower. And they always want to read that one together.
I love that. And I'll definitely put links in the show notes, but part of why, they caught my eye so quickly, trying to explain this to children. I would imagine this is, I'm just coming at it from a parent, but, as a professional, trying to explain to children why these exercises that you're teaching them are so important. I would think, resources like this are really helpful.
They are. And we know Patrick McCown is just the best when it comes to putting this information out there for children as well. I mean, the ABCs, Always Breathe Correctly, is one of my favorite books as well. And all of his pediatric resources are, available online. Getting kids to understand it. He's great at that too. I mean, I took his certification course in the Buteyko breathing method, and that's one of the first things that he mentions is this: how we get children to understand this, and how do we get children to care about breathing correctly? Well, because it's going to help you with sports and athletics. All of my little boy clients love it. All of my adult clients like that aspect as well.
Sure.
It's one of the aspects too of nasal breathing is makes us look more intelligent, and it helps us to, regulate our behavior better. It helps us to remain calm, and so, Patrick McCown, I can't say enough great things about him and all the books and the courses that he's. Again, my foundation started with the Oxygen Advantage program with my background as an athlete. So now I'm just continuing to absorb the pediatric focus. Yeah, everything that we can.
Right. And that's something else that I have found a lot with guests on our show, just lifelong learners, and you're just grabbing more and learning more. And I think that goes back to what we talked about earlier. That's helping to get the message out, because the more we're learning, the more we're sharing.
Exactly. I was sharing with Dr. Green, our pediatric dentist. We've been sharing research together recently that we've discovered, and we're looking at when a person comes in for a consultation, we're looking immediately at the chief concerns that these people are having about their children, and then we're finding research articles that are specific to the symptoms and the diagnoses that these children are coming to us with, and we're showing these parents that we can, with conservative with conservative measures, we can treat this. And asthma is a very good example of what we've been looking at a lot recently. Is sure, there's a place for medications. There's definitely a place for medications to treat asthma, but the Buteyko breathing method, there's a decade almost more of research of using breathing exercises to lessen the severity of asthma symptoms, and in my adult clients, COPD.
Wow.
And so it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. See, I would never put two and two together for asthma. I mean, it makes sense for some of the things I would expect that you're seeing, like ADHD, but did not see the asthma connection coming with that one. And you're talking about breathing methods, and that's something else that we're hearing a lot of talk around lately. And it's not always clear, breath work. Everybody keeps using the term breath work. So I'd like to talk a little bit about, what is that, and what are these exercises look like?
Oh, that's excellent. So what is breath work? Breath work can encompass a lot of different things. It can encompass regulating the rate at which you're breathing, slowing your breathing down. It can involve breath holds, doing breath holding. There's different methods. The Wim Hof method is one that has been researched pretty recently. There's box breathing, which the Navy SEALs use to help with, when they're putting their bodies through really, really rigorous physical conditions and mental strain. We have a lot of research in hospitals about pursed lip breathing, diaphragmatic breathing. So what it looks like is probably going to be different for each person. So if we want to be specific to children, which I love, the breathing exercises for children, a lot of times are games. Games that involve blowing, practicing extending your exhale, blowing longer and blowing with a more controlled rate, inhaling, ideally through the nose.
Right.
And lots of exercises to teach children, like the sequence: breathe in through your nose, out through your nose. Because many of the clients that I work with, they have a habit of, especially when they're speaking, I take a deep breath in through my mouth before I start speaking. And we want to kind of retrain that habit, get them to breathe in gently through their nose before they're speaking. But when we're working with kids, we got to make it fun. So blowing pom-poms across the desk, humming is an example of a great breathing exercise to help to decongest the nose.
Humming is.
Yeah. Singing is great for kids. It's great for adults. It improves vagal tone, improves our mood, lowers our blood pressure. So breath work can encompass so many different things, but it's going to be kind of dependent on what the client needs, right? So if I have a child who comes in with significant nasal congestion, and we do the CBCT, and we just see that there's a lot of inflammation. There's not really any significant, like, let's say, structural obstructions like the adenoids, then we would recommend a nasal hygiene regimen and a few breathing exercises that involve maybe light breath holds and humming, things that they could do in the bathtub, humming to songs, the happy birthday song, things like that. And these conservative exercises are very, very helpful in determining if after 2-3 weeks, maybe longer, of consistent practice with these exercises, if there's no change, if there's no improvement, then we need to look for other help. We need to look at other things that could be causing this inflammation. Maybe there's something in the diet, something in the environment. Maybe we do need a referral to an ENT. Maybe the nasal hygiene regimen that we offered, we need to step it up and send a child to an ENT to have like an expert really determine what that requires.
What could possibly be going on? Yeah. And you mentioned the CBCT, and we're seeing this come up more and more, especially with airway dentists specifically. So for our parents listening, can you just kind of at a high level explain what that is and how that helps you as a myofunctional therapist?
The CBCT is it's really imperative for getting some objective information about how a child is growing and developing when it comes to the craniofacial complex. We can see the position of the jaw joint. We can see the adenoids, the tonsils. We can see the turbinates within the nose. All these things are important in order to determine if there's barriers for potentially making progress in therapy. They point to potentially like the root cause, what's causing issues with these children. The CBCT can also show us tongue posture. It shows us where the teeth are coming in, and if the teeth are coming in correctly. And this is the importance of early intervention, because if we're not keeping an eye on the baby teeth coming in, then we're not really keeping an eye on the bone growth that's occurring in our child's craniofacial complex. My personal story involves, so I grew up in Dover, Delaware, and my parents took me to the dentist as often as they were supposed to, probably. And by the time I was about 10 years old, I had really, really bad crowding. I had my canines were way impacted. And at that point I was 10, and my orthodontist at the time, my parents at the time, they didn't really know like what we know kind of now. And so I had the 4 premolar extraction, and I had braces, and my smile is okay, most people would say. But we didn't know what we didn't know, and we need to keep an eye on these things, because they can affect us into adulthood. And now I see with my my smallish airway, and the root cause of all of it was I had a tongue tie. My tongue was restricted, and I didn't have any speech issues as a kid. I didn't really have any feeding issues. I was on a processed food diet, I would say, as a child. So that probably is like what led to, So that's probably what led to, inadequate bone growth. And so early intervention is really key. And this is kind of another, it's my story, just it all brings me back to here. It's like, this is why I need to be doing what I'm doing now. So, the clients that I work with now, the kids that I work with now, we don't want to take your teeth out. We don't want that at all for you. We want to make more room for your teeth.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that parents love that. They love hearing that, especially the parents who also have had many teeth extracted and are learning, hey, maybe that's not the best idea to take out, an adult tooth that's doing okay and it's healthy. We need that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And it's so interesting to me how many people, we come across now, children's airway, that as adults, here we are sitting here with the repercussions of what, our parents thought. They were doing the right thing.
Exactly. And I feel so bad talking about this with my mother. I really do, because
I know.
I want her to know how appreciative I am of, like, I mean, I'm an only child too. So, I'm her only son, and I love her to death. I love my smile. I love everything about it. I just, I want her to know that, hey, like, this is my mission now.
Hmm.
I'm trying to help people so that they don't have the issues that I'm gonna end up developing, probably, unless I somehow reverse it and
Hmm.
get expansion, which I will do in the future, or get implants, which I'm not too sure about. Um, but then also, I worry about my mom because she snored my whole life. She snored my whole life. Um,
Right.
when I look at her now, when I look at her mouth now, after knowing what I know, I'm like, oh, this is why.
There it is. Yeah.
Yeah, this is why I had a tongue tie. Both of my parents have pretty thick fascia under their tongues, and to my mom, she's again, love her to death, but I will say mentally inflexible slightly. Um, so trying to explain to her that a tongue tie can cause all of these changes to a person's breathing and swallowing and things, is she's not really buying it yet. But you got to plant the seed, and that's what I'm
Hmm.
doing to
Yep.
start.
Right. Exactly.
Hmm.
Well, I think there's a lot of parents that are, like us. They're kind of in this position now, and it's like, okay, now what can we do? But that are even, I have, my children are 7 years apart. So I
Mm,
look at things in my oldest child that I just totally missed. I had no idea. And so, here I am trying rapidly to course correct with her sibling. Just,
mm,
no, you will not have that. We're not pulling your teeth.
hmm. I mean, 5 years from now, we're going to be looking back at maybe even this conversation and changing our minds about some of the what we think is fact and what we think is best
Mhm.
practice. And as a parent, you're constantly evolving in your
Mhm.
parenting techniques, and
Doing the
how
best we
you're
can.
exa- all parents are doing the best that they can for their children. And you can only do, like, you only know what you know.
Right. Right.
Hmm.
Exactly. Exactly. So at the end of every episode, I always just like to turn the floor over to our guest for final thoughts, or, anything that you would like to say to parents, or any message you want to leave us with.
Oh man. Well, I would obviously want to thank you for inviting me on your podcast, and I want to
Oh,
plug,
awesome.
the Center for Airway and Facial Development in Newark. Any parent who has concerns about their sleeping, their breathing, their feeding, their speech, I would really encourage you to reach out. Ask questions and go with your gut. How many times I need to tell that to parents? Parents know so
Yes.
much what is normal for their kid and what is not normal. And um and the parents, they have their their child's their child's well-being, the best well-being in mind. And so I like to say, go with your gut, and if you have questions, ask them. Look for research, get opinions, get second opinions, um,
Hmm.
and work with a network of providers. A myofunctional therapist is somebody who's very rare to come by um, these days so far. But we're hoping that changes. But talk to your speech language pathologist. Talk to the occupational therapist. Talk to the teachers in the school about what you're observing with behavior, and talk to your pediatrician. But ask questions, and going with the gut about your feelings is just imperative. Um, Really, at the Center for Airway and Facial Development too, our mission statement is to advocate for the overall health and well-being of your child. We use like a comprehensive and collaborative approach to work on optimal growth and development through early intervention. We often call this like our growth guidance program. So we want to check on during that initial consult how the child is coming in, and we want to track and we want to help assist and like really promote optimal growth and development. So we don't need to see you at the Pain and Sleep Therapy Center. Dr. Robinson said his goal in his lifetime is to put his own business out of practice.
That is an awesome goal.
Yeah,
absolutely.